What is up, everybody? We are back with another episode of how to make your own Zelda game. In this episode, we're going to be working on animations, and this is going to be an exciting episode. We're also going to be refining the movement. I think we're going to be working on some rolls and stuff. So let's go ahead and get into today's video. So this is where we left off on last video. We just dropped Link, our version of Link, into the project. He's able to move around, but as you can see, he's using a T-pose, which is not the appropriate animation for what he's doing right now. He should be, jumping and walking, all that sorts of stuff. So we're going to implement some animations. So we're going to go to this website called Mixamo. Open up Google and look up mixamo.com. Create an account, sign in. You should already have one of these if you've been following the tutorial. But just log into Mixamo. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to find an idle animation. So that's just an animation that's going to be the character standing completely still. So I'm going to look up idle. We don't have to get too picky because we can adjust all these later. This is mostly so we can build out where the animations are actually going to be placed. So I think this is a good idle animation. I like that one. So we're going to download this without skin and then FBX for Unity. Perfect. Let's download that one. And you do not have to have your character here. It could be anybody. We're just downloading the animations. So then we're also going to need a run animation. So let's see. This one's pretty good. It's not too dramatic. Alright, let's download that without skin. And don't worry about this weird glitching going on. We actually fixed that in the last episode. What else are we going to need? So maybe a jump. See if we get a jump animation. I kind of like this one. I know it's backwards, but we could work with it. I like this one. This is kind of similar to how Link's jump is. Most of these animations are just for the pose. So what we're going to do is find a frame within this animation and use that frame to create our own. So we're back into Unity. What we want to do is import everything we downloaded. So in this top right little downloads icon, you can see every single one of these animations that we downloaded. So I'm going to bring this down into a window. I'm actually going to go back into Unity and create an animations folder. So create folder animations. So now I'm going to open up Google, find these animations. I'm going to find them in the folder, and then I'm going to select all of these and drag them into the animations folder. Perfect. So now we got all the animations. What we want to do is control click all of these animations and copy them and paste them. The reason that we do that is because we can't actually edit these animations until we copy and paste them. For some reason these animations are pretty much fixed and you can't change anything about them, so just copy as I do. Now we have our own animations, and we're going to control select all these and make them loop. So toggle this loop time, and that's going to make sure the animation loops, of course. Now it's time to start actually implementing the animations into the game. Pretty cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down into the character model underneath the player, right? Then we're going to find the armature, and this is where we're going to put all the animations. You have to have the animator on this armature or it's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is add a component, add an animator, and then we're going to create an animator controller. An easy way to do that is to just drag one of your animations onto that object in there, and then it creates an armature for it, or it creates an animation controller for it. So now let's go into the animator, and it shows that the idle animation has been set in the animator. Let's see if it actually plays once we start the game. There we go. Now we got the idle animation. So we want to transition to a run whenever we start moving in a direction, and then we want to jump whenever we click the jump button. Easiest way to do that is take your player movement script, navigate to wherever your player movement script is going to be on your player, inspect your player movement, Control A and copy the entire script, and then go into ChatGPT. What we're going to say is make an is moving animation bool and then make a jump trigger. So you can see how this is going to be implemented once I paste my script. Let's see how it works. So as you can see right here, we have it added the animator.setBool component, and this is just a boolean that tells Unity whether we're moving or not. We also added a jump trigger. So if we navigate to where the jump is right here, we're calling a trigger jump, which is pretty much just a signal that tells the animator to play this animation. So perfect. Let's copy all this code, navigate back to player movement, Control A, Control V, and then save it. Okay, now let's navigate back to the animator. Make sure that to get these windows, the animator and the animation window, you want to go to window at the top, go to animation, and this is how you access both of them. So make sure you click on the link armature and this animator will pop up. Then we're going to go back to the animations and drag in the other animation. So drag in the running animation and the jump animation. Now what we're going to do for now is make it whenever we're moving, transition into the run. So we're going to add, So what we're going to do is go to the parameters at the top, click add, and then add a bool. And then we're going to type is moving. And this has to be named exactly as it's named in this script over here. So right here, it has to be the same exact name, which it is. Capitalizations and all. So now what we're going to do is go back into the animator and click make a transition between the idle state and the running state. And it's going to be on the condition of is moving true. Make sure that there's no exit time. This exit time means that the animation has to completely play out before it transitions to the next one. We don't want that to happen, so that's why you want to disable it. We're going to leave a transition duration that just moves the animations together so it doesn't automatically jerk into the running animation. We'll keep that for now. We might disable it later. And now we need to transition back to idle if we are not moving. So add the condition of is moving false, and then disable the exit time because we want it to instantly stop moving. So let's see what it looks like. So it seems like it broke something. All right, so what's happening? I can see an error down at the bottom. It says missing component. So we forgot to actually drag in the animator component into the player movement script. So click on your player, now find the player movement script, and it looks like there's no variable for animator. It looks like ChatGPT decided to try to get the component on the same game object that this script is on. But our animator, as we know, is in the link armature over here, not on the same game object as the player movement script. So we have to change this. So get rid of that line completely, and I'm just gonna make this animator public so we could drag it in. So save it, go to the inspector, navigate to the player movement script. We can see there's a new field for an animator, and let's drag in the animator from the link armature or whatever armature your armature's name is. So now let's see, we start out idle, perfect, and now whenever we move we play the run animation. Perfect. Looks very wonky, but we'll make it look good in the future. Look at that, it's finally coming together a little bit. So now we need to add the jump animation. Very simple. So what we're gonna do is use this any state for right now. What this any state means is that any animation that is currently on will listen to this signal and it'll make a transition from any animation, so you don't have to directly connect wires like this. So I made a connection from the any state to the jump animation, and I'm gonna make this on the condition that we haven't made yet. Let's go up here and create the condition. We're gonna create a trigger and we're gonna call it jump because that's what it's named in our player movement script. So then click on this connection here and make sure that the condition is once we call the jump trigger, play the jump animation. Let's also make sure that there's no exit time. And for a jump, you want the transition duration to be very short. So I'm just gonna even go 0.1, maybe even, let's just get rid of it altogether. All right, now we want to transition back to idle whenever the jump is complete. We'll probably have a falling animation in a second, but for now, we're just gonna transition back to idle. For this animation, I actually do want to have a little exit time for now. We'll see how it looks, but I'll put it to like halfway through the animation, make sure that we transition to idle. And then no transition duration because we want it to be an instant snap to the ground. So let's see what this looks like. Looks like I named the jump wrong. So let's see what the jump trigger is called in our script over here. So let's navigate to the jump section. And it looks like ChatGPT used a lowercase jump. I'm actually going to change this to an uppercase jump in the script. You could change either or, but I'm going to change it in the script because I typically name things with uppercase letters and I don't want to mess up my brain. So now back into Unity, let's see if we could jump. Perfect. It looks very strange, but right now all we're trying to do is get the correct animations playing. So now there's an issue. Whenever we're in the air, we still play the walking animation. That should not be possible. We should not be ever playing the walking animation while in the air. So what we need is a falling animation. I'm actually curious to see what the falling animation looks like in Wind Waker. So I'm gonna try to find that quickly. Let's see, let's go to YouTube. I found one singular frame of the falling animation, which is perfectly enough for what I need. So it looks like the falling animation is just Link going like this and looping, okay? In Zelda, you're not ever falling very often, so it's not very important to have a crazy realistic falling animation. So we're just gonna take this pose right here. We're just gonna make it move slightly as if they're falling in the air. So let's actually go make a falling animation quick. So let's make the falling animation. Let's navigate Mixamo a little bit more. Let's see if we can find a better fall. Something that looks exactly like this. So, I mean, this is freaking close. This one's pretty much spot on. So I'm just gonna download this one. Download. It's almost like they used the Mixamo one, but let's drag this into our project as we did before. Go to your animations window, go to your downloads, drag it in. I guess it's called jumping. And then let's duplicate the actual animation within it. And then I'm gonna rename it to falling. Now, drag this, let's delete this fall animation. Drag this into the animator. And then let's go into the animation window again, and then edit this falling animation. So now we got this falling animation, but it's really a jump. So I just need to get this little section right here. This is the perfect section, I think. If I could just loop this part of the animation somehow, this would be a great falling animation. So I'm gonna click somewhere in the window where I could deselect everything. Then I'm gonna click on this little keyframe icon so I could get a long string of keyframes. I'm gonna click Control A and then backspace to delete everything. And then at the very first frame, I'm gonna paste what I just grabbed. Oh, I think it pasted the old one. So make sure that you copy this. Copy it, Control C, Control A, delete, at the first frame, paste. There we go. Now we got a nice little falling animation. There's no movement in it yet, but that's going to be simple to do. What you're going to do is copy the first frame, bring it out a little bit to like 25, whatever, and then just paste it. There's already some movement, and that's because of the type of curve that we're using on these animations. By default in Unity, it's like a Bezier curve. So what you want to do is click Control A, right click, and just play with whatever curve you want. So flat, I think, gives us a flat one. Yeah, there's no movement. That's what I'm gonna do. And now in the middle of these keyframes, what you want to do is just adjust it a bit to make it look like it's moving a bit. So I actually don't want it to be as dramatic because that's gonna make the transition not look as clean. So if you see how they did it in Wind Waker, it's a pretty mild change. Like he's just falling like that. Like his arms are not all the way up in the air. So let's move his arms down a bit. So you want to click this record icon, or your changes aren't going to be saved to the animation. Go to the frame 1 and then find his arms in the hierarchy. It takes a second. I'm going to change the shoulder rotation. Actually, I'm just going to change the arm rotation. That's probably better. Yeah, arm rotation. Find the right arm rotation. Perfect. And that, I think that's pretty good. He's kind of turned at an angle a bit, but I'm not trying to do anything crazy right now. So I'm going to copy this frame, paste it on the last one again so we could maintain this frame, and let's actually make him move a bit. So let's go to the spine. Let's rotate the spine down a bit. Let's make the legs move slightly. Right up leg, just move that up. Right bottom leg, right, or let's go left leg, move this left leg, or left leg, move that in a bit. I think it's kind of weird, so I'm gonna fix that over here. I'm gonna go to right foot rotation. That one's good. It's the left foot that looks weird. Left foot rotation. Perfect. There we go. I'm gonna make it look like that, and then I'm gonna copy this, paste it at the end again. There we go. So that's our falling animation for now. Let's actually make his arms look a little bit more, because that would make it look more natural, but this is not going to be perfect. I could always adjust this later. No reason to be spending like 20 minutes on one animation, okay? Like, honestly, animations are not that important in my experience of game development. Anything is better than nothing, okay? So if you just do any animation for anything, could be the worst animation in the world, it's better than no animation. All right, so now that we got the falling animation, go back into the animator, and we're gonna actually use the isGrounded variable that we have in our player movement script to dictate if we're playing the falling animation or not. So we're gonna go from any state to falling. Actually, not any state, we can't do that because then the jump animation will go into falling. So we're gonna have to connect this manually to all of them. I'm gonna put falling down here, and I'm gonna add a boolean isGrounded. So if we are not grounded, I want to be falling. So whenever I connect these two animations together, I'm going to click plus, go to isGrounded, and when isGrounded is false, I want to play the falling animation. So let's change that exit time to 0. We can have a little bit of a transition duration, and then we want to transition back to idle if I hit the ground. So let's go if isGrounded is true, transition back to idle. And then if we're running and we're not grounded, we also want to transition to falling. So connect that. IsGrounded is false. All right, no exit time, but slight transition duration. Let's make it 0.1, 0.01. Nah, just 0.05. How about that? Make sure transitions duration back to idle. Yeah, 0. This transition should be 0.05 too. So now, if we're falling while in the idle animation, we will play the correct animation. Now we need to fall after we jump. So what I'm going to do is remove this little tie right here, and then I'm gonna paste the falling animation again, right up here. I could use the same one, which I probably should. Yeah, let's do that. Let's use the same one. Let's move the falling up here. Let's move this over a bit. And then I'm going to connect the jump to the falling, because after you jump, let's say you're still in the air, you want to transition to the falling animation. So what I'm going to do is make it where if the whole jump animation plays out, it transitions to falling, and then it goes by the falling logic. Right? So we want exit time, and then a transition duration of 2.5 is pretty good. Let's actually make the exit time a little bit shorter so it doesn't loop the jump animation. And then I'm going to make the jump animation transition to idle. Let's say if we hit the ground before this starts, and that should be good. So let's say if is grounded is true, transition to idle, but if is grounded is false, we're going to continue falling. Let's see if I did everything right here. So right now I am not walking for some reason. This transition's messed up. So if is grounded is true. You know why? So what we need to do is actually register this is grounded bool in the player movements. I completely forgot to do that. So all we have to do is in the update method is get access to our animator. So I'm just going to copy this little line down here, paste it right below the is grounded. And then I'm going to say the animation is grounded is equal to the is grounded on the player movement. So very simple. Control S to save that, and that should work just fine. So now we click play, and there we go. We have a falling animation, and it stops playing whenever we hit the ground. So all the correct animations are playing at the correct time. So let's start making this look good. Looks like whenever I jump, it doesn't actually play the jump animation. I think it's instantly going to the fall animation, which is not right. I think I know why. So this is how we can fix that. We're gonna copy everything from this script and then go into ChatGPT. And then we're gonna say, so I'm gonna explain the problem with ChatGPT. I said, make sure if I jump, it plays a jump animation and then falls with the is grounded animation logic, and it doesn't fall instantly. It sounds a little bit like gibberish, but just explain the problem the best that you can, and ChatGPT will understand probably. So ChatGPT made an is falling bool. Yeah, I'm gonna see how it uses it in the game. So I'm gonna Control A, Control V, and then see where it uses the is falling. So, okay, I pasted that in there, and then let's change this is grounded bool to is falling. See if this fixes the issue. Control S, player movement script. And now let's go back into the game and let's see. It seems like it's inversed. So what we want to do is go back into the animator and make sure that we flip the is falling, because I think that it's flipped now. So find all the functions with is falling and flip the variables. I'm gonna flip all these to the opposite. So let's see how this works. So it seems like the jump animation still doesn't want to play. I'm going to delete this connection right here quickly. Let's see how that works. That seems to work fine. So just delete that connection and the animation works great. Now let's actually make them look good. So now that we got all the animations playing at the right time, let's make the animations not look bad. So I'm gonna go look at Wind Waker and see what their animations look like quick. I'm focusing mostly on the run animation right now. All right, let's see if we could try to replicate that. Let's see what's different about ours. Okay, the difference is it's really slow. Let's just increase the speed real quick and see. That is way better. Okay, so we just need to speed it up and make it less stiff, I think. I think this animation is much more fluid. Let's see what theirs looks like again. Alright, so let's see. Go to the running animation. Let's just edit this bad boy to make it better. I'm going to pull up a separate window of this Link's animation and see if I can replicate it the best I can. So what I usually do is there's like a clip feature on YouTube where it'll let you like kind of loop a little section. So I'll click clip and then drag this really close together, and then I could just loop the animation, and I'll set the music to. I'm just gonna keep this on a separate monitor. So let's see if I can find a run animation. I'm gonna look for a better run animation on Mixamo. That's a pretty good run animation. What about this one? What if we made it faster? It looks a little bit dorky. What about this one? Just don't like the arms. Ooh, this one. That one looks pretty good. Let's see what. If I just fix his posture a bit, I think this could be it. I'm gonna download this animation without skin. Drag this into Unity as I did before. It's right here. So I'm going to copy this, paste it. I'm going to call this running new. And I'll make sure it's looping. Delete the old one. And then I'm going to drag this into my running slot. So drag this right there, and now I should be able to. So running new. Now let's play it. See what it needs. Okay, it looks pretty good so far. Let's see what it looks like in game. It looks pretty good, honestly, like really good. I like that one. It's pretty much identical. I think that he could be more upright. I'm gonna add that. So what I'm going to do to make this easier to edit is I'm going to find the key poses like this one. I'd say that's a key pose, so I'm going to add a keyframe there. Yeah, everything before that, see if that looks good. Yeah, and then key pose past this is probably right there. It's key pose. Delete all those. Right there's another key pose. I'm just identifying the peaks of movement and then adding a keyframe, and it looks like it loops after that. So let's see. Yep, same animation. Now it's going to be easier to adjust, and I think that if his spine was more upright, that would look better. So let's go spine rotation. Let's just delete it on all frames. There we go. Shouldn't delete the spine rotation on all of these. Delete all the spine rotation. So I think I deleted one too many. Delete 2 of the spine rotations and see how that works. That looks pretty good. His head is doing some weird stuff. His head's kind of weird, but otherwise looks pretty good. So let's just go to the neck and let's fix the neck. So I think the neck rotation is messed up. I'm just gonna delete that. See what happens if I delete the head rotation? Does that fix it? All right, that looks pretty good. So I think we're gonna add our own head rotation. We're just gonna make him look up slightly and then bob a little bit in the middle. So then copy the first and last frame. Let's make sure that this is free smooth. There we go. I think that's a good looking run animation. Look at that. I like that a lot. Now let's fix the jump, because what the hell is that? Let's see what Link's jump looks like. Let's go into Google, let's pull up a reference. Let's find a clip of him jumping. I found one where he jumps. So right here he jumps. Here's a clip. It's very subtle, but he just like goes like this. And then it transitions to the fall animation. So let's just try to replicate that. So I'm gonna go into the jump, and then like, I'm just gonna take this pose right here, select that, delete everything else. Now, honestly, what if I just kept that one pose? What would that do? Because I have a transition. So let's go to animation and just make this transition. Let's say, so let's just decrease the transition duration to falling. Get rid of fixed duration. That's probably what's messing it up. Let's see if that works. For some reason it's acting like this is a long animation. Let's just copy this and make it 2 seconds long. Let's see how that works. So if I jump, transition here, if I exit, okay, select these, right click, and then change these to flat. Now let's see. Okay, now what if we increase the transition duration? All right. So all I'm doing is I got a static pose like this, and now I'm gonna adjust the transition duration to make it look right. I think so. Adjust the transition duration to like, let's make this 5 on the dot. I want it to be slower and smoother. Add a free smooth. Smooth this out a bit. Can transition to self false. How about that? So I'm gonna change this from any state where any state could go into the jump animation, and I'm gonna make it where I manually do it. So I'm gonna connect this to the jump, make sure whenever I call a jump, it goes into that. Make it a 0.1 transition time, no exit time. Same thing with the running, no exit time, 0.1, jump. This should be good. And then get rid of the fixed duration on both of these. Should be by percentage. So let's go like that, like that. There we go. That should be good. So it looks a little bit strange right now. I think it's because his spine is looking down. For some reason, Mixamo likes to always curve the spine of the characters like crazy. So let's just get rid of all the spine movement, the 2 bottom spines. We could do it ourselves. So let's go spine, spine. All right, that's not bad. There's a little bit of weird spine rotation though. Let's see if this spine too. And then let's actually rotate the lower spine to the right. Let's rotate the hips. There we go. And let's make the arms look exaggerated. So let's go left arm, right arm, down. And then let's actually remove like the head, all the head rotation. Then with the neck. And we got to make sure we paste it on the back end. Let's see what it looks like in Wind Waker. It's like really fast jump. Okay, yeah, it's not, we're going too fast. So these 2 transition durations should be 0.1. So with the jump animation, we're having an issue where if we're in the middle of a transition between the idle and the running animation, it takes a second for it to register that you jumped. So an easy solution to this, the easiest way, is just delete these 2 connection points and transition to this jump animation through script. So what we're gonna go do in the player movement is scroll down to where we're jumping, and what you're going to do is use animator.crossfade, and then you want to actually put in the name of the animation. That is not the trigger right here, it's the name of the animation that you want to transition to. So I transitioned to jump, and I did it at 0.25 seconds. So now using that crossfade, it's way more consistent. Regardless of what animation we're in or what transition, you're always going to jump. So this is what my jump looks like right now. It looks way better than before. The animations still need a little bit of work, but like, I'm not an animator. all you have to do is just mess with the animations until they look good. It's literally all you have to do. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna do it on camera because it's literally just a ton of finicking. I'll show the final product of what the animations look like, but after you get the animation controller set up, it's just a matter of modifying the animations until they look right. So yeah, this is where we are right now. What do we need to do next? So we are replicating Wind Waker. We're not really replicating Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom as much in the series. There's going to be aspects from those games that we're going to be pulling from. We're actually going to be more so replicating Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker. And in those games, whenever you jump, it's not just a force up that's applied. Whenever you jump in those games, it's usually you run up to an edge and then you launch forward. So to have that effect whenever you jump and you launch forward, what we're going to do is make it where we could animate the jump to move forward and then actually translate that into the game. So it's going to make more sense once I start applying it. So in Zelda, there's a ton of situations where Link performs an animation that makes him move in a direction. So whenever Link jumps, he jumps forward. Whenever Link performs an attack, he attacks and it moves his character forward a bit. Now, there's a few ways that you could do that, and there's two really acceptable ways to do it. One of them is more complicated. The more complicated way is to, within the code, whenever you trigger a specific animation, move the character a specific distance within the code. But you would have to do that with every single animation, and you would have to take into account transitions and every single animation state. But the more simple approach is to use what's called root motion. Root motion is pretty much, let's go back to Mixamo. Root motion is pretty much where the animation dictates how your character moves. So as you can see right here, this character is not using root motion right now, but if I untoggled this in place toggle, the character starts moving forward. This is root motion because the character is actually moving with the animation instead of moving in place. So we're going to be using root motion for pretty much everything in this game. Every single attack, every single jump, or every single animation pretty much that requires the player to move in a direction, we're just going to use root motion. And I'm 90% certain that's actually how they did it in the original Zelda games. So I actually did some research, and the original Zelda games don't actually use root motion. They use something very similar. The way that the original Zelda games did these attacks, where whenever you attack you move forward and all this, is they through code made like an animation curve and then moved Link along that animation curve, which is pretty much the same thing as root motion. The only reason they did that and didn't use root motion is because the programmers and the animators were two separate jobs. So they were trying to isolate the jobs as much as possible. But we are both the animator and the programmer in this project, so it's much smarter to use root motion. So that's what we're gonna do. This is way easier, way more practical, way more fun in my opinion. So this is what we're gonna do. First things first is you're going to click on your armature, all right? Wherever your animator component is, you want to toggle the applied root motion on the animator. This pretty much means that the root, so wherever the animator component is sitting on, if you move this component right here, the root, then it's going to translate into the real world. So you want to toggle that to true. So what we're going to do now is go to the jump animation, click record, and then we're going to click on the animator or the armature, right, where the root is, that what would be considered the root of the animation, and then go out a little bit to the back end of the animation and move them forward. Now if we do this, we will now jump forward whenever we jump. So let's see, you probably can't tell, but whenever we jump, we're actually moving forward a bit. Let's make it more exaggerated so it's easier to tell. So I'm gonna move this out a bit, maybe to like 8, and then move the armature out. So I'm gonna click jump, and as you can see, Link actually moves forward. So we have to fix this issue where whenever we jump, we get like really far out and we stop tracking the character. So what you want to do is just go to every animation and turn off write defaults. What write defaults means, so I think I should give an explanation of what write defaults actually means. So let's say you have a running animation and then you want to transition into a jump animation. With write defaults enabled, the first frame of that jump animation, Unity is going to try to guess what that pose should be. Usually you do not want that to happen, so turn write defaults off. So to start fixing this issue where whenever we jump, the player gets farther and farther from the camera, what we need to do is actually move this player movement script onto our actual armature itself. So what I'm gonna actually duplicate the player, make a new player, and I'm gonna drag out my model to a different section, drag out the model from that player that we duplicated, and then drag out the ground check and put the ground check underneath the armature. So now if we go into the scene, the ground check should still be in the right spot. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the original player. I'm going to delete this duplicated player that I made, go back to the original player and take a look at what this script has. So we have a player movement, a toggle objects on right click, character controller, and a capsule. Pretty much need to put all of this on this armature right here. So we're going to add a component, add a character controller. First off, we're going to add a player movement and then a capsule. And we're just going to do these for now. We got to fill in all of these player movement variables that are gone. So I'm going to drag in the character controller from the same object. Go find the camera transform, which is right here. Find the ground check, which is underneath the armature that we dragged in earlier. And then make the ground mask the ground, the target enemy, the enemy, and then the animator that's on the same object. Okay, so now we want to disable the old player, make sure that one's not affecting this one, and let's see how it works. So it looks like we're stuck in the air, and that is due to the character controller. I think it's the character controller. So the character controller's like height and radius are not right. Whenever you put like a character controller on like a 3D model that you made yourself, it does not calculate the height and stuff very correctly. So what we want to do is change the height. As you can see, this little gizmo is extending right there, and change the radius, just add some arbitrary value just so you can see it. Move it up on the y-axis and then try to match the height to the best of your ability. I think an even, let's say 100. I would say maybe 130. Seems, let's go 125. Then move it up on the Y a bit. Just make sure the very bottom of the cylinder is at the bottom of the feet, and yeah, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then we have to actually do the same thing with the collider. So find the collider, you can see it's very small, and make the height some arbitrary value just so we can see it. Now we could actually drag the handles on this one, which is much easier. Put all this there, and then grab this, click Alt so I could scale it equally on all sides, and there we go. Let's see if this works. Perfect. So now we're able to move around, but it looks like the camera is still following the old player that we had. So let's fix that. Let's go to the free look camera, and where it says follow and look at, we're going to change it to the armature that we just made. Perfect. Let's jump. That's what I'm talking about, son. So make sure that everything is correct. The lock on camera also needs to have the link armature on the follow part of that. Let's increase the game view and let's see if the lock on still works. The lock on does not still work because we forgot to add the component. So go back to the link armature underneath the new character, and then go down to add component, and let's add a toggle objects on right click. This is our lock on script, and drag in the free look camera into object 1 and then lock on camera to object 2. We will refine this later, but there we go. So it seems to have messed up the camera after we created this new character. It's much lower. So what we're gonna do is fix that quickly. So just turn on the lock on camera, turn off the free look camera, and then just adjust the values. I think all we have to adjust is the height, or like make sure you clicked on the lock on camera. Would it be the aim that we have to adjust? Yeah, so it looks like it's looking directly at the player's feet. So what we want to do is make sure it's the shoulders that it's sitting on. There we go. Works just the same. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna enable the free look camera again, and that should be good. It seems like the free look camera is also slightly off. I think it's the same issue. So go to the free look camera, go to the body. Is there a body on here? Yeah, it's looking at the feet. So is there any way to change? Oh, there it is, the body right here. So what we're gonna do, I think, is change the look at. So what we need to create a new game object under our link armature. Empty. I'm gonna say look at point. I'm gonna place this around the shoulders of our character, and this is what the camera's gonna look at. So I'm just gonna place these in there, and there we go. Now it's more like it was before. Perfect. And I think I could get away with moving it a little bit farther down, which I think I'm gonna do. Just gonna move this around the middle. That's where it was based before whenever I made the initial camera. So now let's lock on, see what happens. Still a little bit janky, the camera. We will fix that at some point. Not in this video, but at some point. but that is very nice for me. Now, I think for me, the logical next step, let's fix this bug where whenever we land, it doesn't automatically transition onto walking. Should be simple enough. All we gotta do is go to the animator. I think a perfect thing to do would be to remove these all together, and what we'll do is go back to player movement, take this animator crossfade, and then where it says is grounded, I think maybe right here, go down, go animator.crossfade, and let's say idle. We'll just instantly transition to the idle animation whenever we're grounded, and I'll change this to like 0.1. 0.05. So that should just make us snap into the idle animation if we were grounded. So let's see what that does. Recompile. There we go. Seems to have broken our run animation somehow, but it definitely solved the other issue. It seems to be like calling it over and over and over again. It's calling this every frame, it looks like. So what I'm gonna do is Control A, control this, copy this whole script. We're gonna go back to ChatGPT, and what we're gonna try to do is create a condition where if we're grounded, like if is grounded is set to true, and then it's set to false, and then set to true again. Oh my, this is gonna be hard to explain. The issue right now is that we're setting the animation to idle every single frame because this is in the update method, and this little if statement is being called every frame. So what we need is a trigger whenever, right as we ground, we need something to be fired that could tell us to play that animation, and then only be fired once we've been ungrounded and grounded again. Okay, so that's what we're gonna pretty much ask you to do, and we do that with a separate boolean that is set to true. We do that with another boolean, and I'll explain further in a second. So go to ChatGPT. So I'm just gonna ask T to make me a function that's only called once whenever I'm grounded, and that's where I'm gonna place the animation. So I pasted the script in there. Now ChatGPT is generating the script. Hopefully it didn't misunderstand me. So it created an on landed function, which is perfect. Let's copy the script, Control A, Control V, and then I'm gonna take the crossfade to idle right here, copy that, delete it, go down to the on landed, and then paste that into the on landed function, and then save it. And this should fix our issue. So now let's make this big, click play. There we go. Now we can walk, jump, and land perfectly. That is amazing. So there's no clear issues right now that we have to solve. So that means we get to move on to the next fun part. We're gonna create a roll. The most iconic move in Zelda game history is the roll, and it's very simple. It's pretty much what we already did with the jump. All we need is an animation where Link rolls, and then we just need to move him forward. So it might get complicated because whenever you start trying to make an animation where you flip your character upside down, it doesn't loop very well, but we're going to try to find a creative fix for that. So I'm going to go back to Mixamo and see if I can find a roll animation. All right, which one of these is the best? Let's see what Wind Waker does with their roll. I know the roll in Zelda games are very, very quick and snappy. So let's see. I had a Wind Waker. Okay, so looks like he literally just goes straight over his head. It's so fast that, like, honestly, any animation is gonna work. We just gotta make it really quick. So let's go to Mixamo. I think the standard roll is the best option so far. What's sprinting forward roll? Ooh, that one looks better. So I'm split between these two. I like this one. The standing to roll, stand to roll. So I'm gonna do this in place. Looks like their in place doesn't work very well. So I'm actually just gonna use their root motion version because we're gonna make it root motion anyway. So download the roll. Now we're going to drag this into our project animations, pull up this window, drag this in. All right, stand to roll, that's what it's called. So there it is. Copy this, paste it. I'm just gonna rename it to roll. And then let's drag this in, and then let's transition back to idle. Transition to idle, and just make the exit time 1 because you want to finish the roll completely, and then have a slight transition duration too. So is moving true, or sorry, let's just make it no condition, and now it should transition back. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the method as before, and just call it animator.crossfade. And what we're gonna do is copy the entire script, copy. Then we're gonna go into Mixamo. We're gonna go back to ChatGPT, and then we're gonna say, so I just told it to call a roll animation when I press space using the animator crossfade. And I made sure to put in parentheses exactly how I wanted it to be named so ChatGPT doesn't mess it up. I'm gonna paste the script, click enter, and then let T cook. Cook it up, ChatGPT. Copy this, go back to Unity and paste it in, Control S, reload it, and then click play, and let's see what happens. So it seems like what's happening is, first off, I'm activating it with the space bar, which is what I'm using for the jump button. So I'll probably change that right now. Let's change it to, instead of the space bar, let's change it to like just F for now. That'll be our roll button for now. We'll fix it later. And let's just see what that does first off. There we go. Okay, so for some reason, the root motion is moving it back, and we don't want that. So let's go to inspector, make sure the right defaults is off. Yeah, okay, so the roll has right defaults on. Go roll. It's still transitioning back for some reason. Let's go look at the roll animation and see why it's sliding link back. You know why? It's because it's using the hips instead of it was moving the body using the hips instead of the armature. So let's change that. So all you got to do is delete the hip position. You don't want to delete the hip rotation because then you're going to mess up the animation. Hip position, now he rolls in place, and then what you want to do is grab the link armature, click record, and then just whenever he rolls, just move him forward a bit. Perfect. And then I'm going to add a little smoothing to it, some free smooth. I'm going to move it out a bit more. All right, now we can roll. Check that out. Needs a lot of work though, so what we're going to do is work on it. First thing, let's make this more easily manageable. So we're going to go and mark all the keyframes. So right here is the first keyframe, I would say. So create that, a big long line of keyframes. Next, I would say is right here. Big long line of keyframes, delete everything in the middle, see if it still functions. Perfect. And then now I would say this is the next keyframe. This is going to get real particular right here. Yeah. And then right here is definitely the next keyframe. Delete all of these. And then I guess that's it. Let's add a keyframe in the middle. So let's say right there. So there we go. So I think we could actually delete this back half. We don't want all that. We just want him to stand up really quickly. All right, that looks pretty good. Now let's just try speeding up the animation. So grab everything and squeeze it down a little bit. Yeah, squeeze all that down. Let's move everything close to the start. Pretty good. Let's see how that flows in the game. Look at that. That's already so freaking good. The animation still needs work. And look, his body isn't on the ground, but we could fix that. So what we're gonna do is go to the hips, and we're just gonna make sure that he's on the ground the whole time. So actually, first off, let's move him so he's actually on the ground to make it easier for reference. And down where his feet are on there, more so the bottom of the collider. That's good enough. Now let's go back to the armature, the roll animation, and as you can see right here, he's like completely off the ground. So we got to click record, go to the hips. I would say right here we should move him down hip wise. It looks like we're in local space, so change that to global. Now you can move it straight down. It's right there. And I would say I would probably want to move him up right there, and then he's on the ground right there. This down. So boom, 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 roll. Right here he leaves the ground a bit. Maybe another hip keyframe right there. And then right here, come up all the way back to the original hip keyframe position. I'm actually just going to copy the first hip and then paste it back here. See how this flows. It looks very weird. It's not very fluid. And I'm going to just remove this one right here. I'm going to remove a few of them because it will never be fluid because of how weirdly our character's shaped. So we're just going to make it an illusion. So I'm going to delete a few of these so it's just more fluid right there. I'm going to delete this one maybe. What does this look like? Yeah, I think that looks good. He clips through the ground a bit, but we're going to speed it up so you won't even be able to tell. So these few little, let's just speed everything up. All right, too fast. Go a little bit out. I think that's perfect. And this back, what if we just deleted this back frame? What would that look like? Oh, that's much better. So I just deleted the keyframe where he's standing up, and now the transition between roll and idle is taking care of it. So I mean, that looks good to me. I will do like an animation overall on my own, but this is, at this point, it's just a matter of adjusting the keyframes to make it look right. So that is perfectly fine with me. I mean, look at that. We're so far into it already. I think that we should also make it move a little bit more. Roll. Let's go to the armature. I will do that much. I'm going to move it a little bit farther out. What happened? Why is it doing that now? These are too close. There we go. Yeah, I think that looks good. I'm going to go through and improve every animation on my own eventually. But that's, at this point, it's just a matter of just making small adjustments, watching it, making small adjustments, and then just continue to do that until the animations look good. So that is up to you guys. It also looks like I'm levitating over the ground a bit, so I'm gonna fix that. So we're gonna go to the character controller, make sure that it's directly on the feet. So it looks like there's a little gap here. I'm gonna change the height a bit, put that right at the base of his feet, even clipping a little bit. And then I'm gonna do the same with the capsule collider. Perfect. Look at that. So now the obvious next step is to make strafing movement for combat. So right now, whenever we're looking at the enemy, Link is in a normal, just like walking animation, but he needs to change into combat mode and start like strafing and stuff. So let's start working on that. Okay, so let's go find a reference for some of the combat. All he does is switch his idle and walk animation, so it turns into more of like a fight stance and then a shuffle. So first thing I want to do is I want to set it up so whenever I'm in locked on mode, I go into a different idle and running animation. Okay, so my mic messed up terribly whenever I was recording the back half of this video, so we're just gonna redo it. Easy enough. What we're gonna do is create the combat animations. Right now, we do not have any. We're just walking around and it does not look great. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and copy the idle and running animation right here. Copy these two and paste them right there. Ignore this. This is the finished product. So now these are gonna be our combat animations, like the animations for when we're in the combat state. So let's name it combat idle, okay, and then this one combat strafe. So now what we're gonna do is go find some animations for these. So go to Google, go back to Mixamo. What you're gonna want to do is go to Mixamo, and we're gonna try to find a combat idle and a combat walk. So here's a good sword and shield idle that I use. This is the one I use for me, and I've also found a combat walk. I think I use this one. So download those two animations. Make sure that you duplicate them and name them appropriately. Now you want to select your combat idle, drag that in, select your combat strafe and drag that one in. And now we have the correct animations in the correct places. So what we're going to do next is we are going to, so now we need to make it where we transfer into those animations whenever we lock on. So what you want to do is create a new boolean, and we're going to call it locked on. All right. And we're also going to make a new trigger called switch lock on. What we need to do is have a signal that is called whenever we switch from lock on state. If I click the lock on button, I want a signal to be called. And whenever I get out of the lock on function, I want a signal to not be called. Go to ChatGPT and ask this question. Add an on locked on function. Paste that script and get a result. Copy this script, go back into Unity and paste it. Now you should have an on locked on function somewhere. And this is where you want to set the animation trigger switch to lock on. And make sure that you assign the locked on bool to the lock on boolean that we already have in this script in the update method somewhere. Now after we have all that, we want to drag the any state from up here down to this section right here. Make a transition to idle and then make a transition to combat idle. The first transition is going to be when locked on is false and switch locked on is activated. That's the trigger. So whenever locked on is false and we activate the trigger switch lock on, that's whenever we want to go to the normal idle state. So also turn off can transition to self and turn down the transition duration to 0. And then do the opposite over here. So we're going to go locked on true and then switch lock on. Just add that there. And now turn off the fixed duration and transition duration and can transition to self. So now we should be able to lock on. There we go. Now we got the appropriate lock on and walk animations. Check it out. But now we want to be able to side hop, backflip, and roll as Link does. So let's get on to that. So we're going to have different jumps for all different directions because Link can side hop to the left, to the right, he can do a backflip, and he could roll. So instead of making a very convoluted tree right here in the animator, I'm going to create a sub-state machine. And using this, we could go inside of it, and it's pretty much another animator within the current animator, which just makes the organization way easier. So I'm actually going to name this combat jumps because it's just that's what it is. It's combat jumps. Now let's go into the combat jumps, and this is where we're going to start adding like the side hops and stuff. So we need to first off make the animations for it. So what you want to do So we're not going to be able to find like a side hop animation on Mixamo, but that's okay, we don't really need one. All we need to do is copy the combat strafe. All we got to do is copy the combat strafe and paste it. So copy that, paste it, and then rename it to side hop. Then make sure it's looping. Then what you want to do, select your armature, go to the animation window, and now let's see what it looks like. So this is what the combat strafe looks like. So now drag that side hop into the animator, and then go to the animation window, click on the armature, and then go navigate to that side hop animation. So now we can see that our character is just performing the sidewalk animation, which is not what we want. What we're gonna do is look for a frame where it would look like kind of like a side hop. So I'm gonna say this frame is probably the best representation of the side hop, and we're just gonna make it very dramatic and pretty much just create our own side hop. So click somewhere out in the window so you're not selecting anything. Make sure you don't have anything selected, and then click this little keyframe button. And that's going to make a long string of keyframes down here. Then we're going to delete everything except this string of keyframes. Whoops. Oh my gosh. Do it again. So yeah, delete everything except those keyframes. Now we have Link with his legs open. We're going to copy that, paste that over here. And now it looks like we already kind of have like a side hop animation. This is pretty much all you need. But an important part of the side hop animation is actually moving Link to like the left or right. So this is just going to be the left side hop. So I'm going to move Link in that direction to the left. And now honestly, that's all you really need. So now that we have that, make a left and right version of this animation. All you would have to do to do that is navigate to the project window and find that animation. Rename that one that you just made to side hop left or whichever direction you want to. Copy this animation, paste it, and create a side hop right, and just make him jump in the opposite direction. So now that you have like a corresponding left and right version of that animation, drag those in. And now we're going to try to change between these two animations. Now, I don't really have an elegant way to get into this. I've never really found an elegant way to get into one of these state machines here, except for this method, which works completely fine. So I'm going to create a state, make sure it's empty, and then I'm just going to name this combat jump. You can leave the motion field empty, and then you want to connect this combat jump to these two animations. So I'm going to make a transition, and now we need a way to tell the script which animation to play. So if we go back into the player movement script, we'll see that we have these two floats right here, float X and float Z. Let's say this is the top of our player's head, and you can move in 4 directions. In this script right here, we have these values called the input axis horizontal and the input axis vertical. And these are just numbers that correspond with the directions that we're moving. So this would be the horizontal axis, and this would be the vertical axis. So anytime we're moving in the game, we're just adjusting this number pretty much to instruct like how our player is moving. So we could actually use that number to know what direction we're moving in, which allows us to play the correct animation. So all that to say, all we need to do is create some variables. All we need to do is create a variable that we could read to tell us which direction we're jumping in. So first thing you want to do is go to this plus icon and go to the create a float. And then you want to call this direction X. And then you want to create another float. Whoops, close out of that by accident. And then you want to make a corresponding hop direction Y. Now take those values. Now what we're going to do with those values is we're going to plug it into the script. So now what we want to do, now that we created these two variables, is we want to plug them into our player movement script. So we want these variables to equal our movement variables. So that's the X and Z axis. So navigate in your script where it says input.horizontal and input.vertical. Okay, and right under that, you want to create a vector2 movement variable. You can name this whatever you want, but create a vector2 and cache a movement just like this. And now what we want to do is set these variables that we made, these floats, to equal these values. So you would go animator.setFloat and put in the string that you named over here. So hop direction X, comma, movement, which is this variable that we made here that cached these variables, dot normalized, which just makes these variables equal either 1, 0, or -1. And then just put X for the X direction. And then do the corresponding with a Y. And that's pretty much it. And now we have these variables equaling our movement. So if I click play, you can see that the variables change based on which direction I'm moving in. So I get -1 on the Y whenever I'm moving towards the camera, +1 on the Y whenever I'm moving away, +1 on the X whenever I'm moving to the right, +1 or -1 on the X whenever I'm moving to the left. Perfect. Now that we have all these values, we could assign an animation to each of those. So what we're going to do is go back into our combat jumps, go to this connecting arrow right here, click on the conditions, and let's go to hop direction X. We want this side hop to be activated whenever we're going negative on the X axis. Okay, so in the condition, if hop direction X is less than 0, we're going to play this animation. And we'll do the same thing with this one. If hop direction X is greater than 0, we're going to play this animation. And now we need to make a transition out of this state. Make sure you go into combat idle. All right, transition to combat idle. And for both of these, we want a 1 second, or we want a 1 exit time with 0 transition duration. And that's going to make sure the animation plays all the way through. And we'll do that with both of them. And with the combat jump, we want 0 exit time with no transition duration. We want it to automatically go to the side hop and do the same thing with the other. So now there's one more step. We need to, whenever we click the jump button, instead of executing the normal jump over here, we need to execute this combat jump. So navigate to our jump logic, and this is what we have to do. So this is what your normal jump logic looks like. If we click the jump button, we're gonna crossfade to the jump animation. But whenever we're locked on, we want to go to a different jump animation. So what we're gonna do is say, if we are locked on, if lock on equals false, we want to perform the normal jump logic, which is this logic right here. We're gonna create parentheses and drop all of this into this logic. But else if lock on is true, we want to play a different jump animation. So you copy all this logic, paste that down here, and delete all of this. We don't need any of that. And we're gonna, instead of crossfading to jump, we're gonna crossfade to this animation, combat jump. There we go. And I'm gonna remove the transition duration because I am not sure if that's gonna break anything, and we don't really need it. So now that's what our new jump logic looks like. So save that and go back into Unity and let's see if this works. We should also add an is grounded check as well. All right. Now let's go back into the normal. Let's go back into our game and see if these side hops are working. Click play. I'm gonna lock on and I'm going to jump. All right. Looks like the side hops are working. Perfect. So now let's create a backflip. We need to be able to backflip and roll forward. So now we just navigate back to Mixamo and find a backflip. So just look up backflip, and I used this one right here. Actually, I think I used this one. So download that, import that into your project, and copy the animation out of the thing that got imported and paste that in here to create your own. Then what you want to do is drag that animation into our project, and then we're going to make a transition to it. And we want to do the backflip whenever our hop direction Y is greater than 0. That's when we want to perform this. So make sure we have no exit time, no transition duration, and then we exit back out into the combat idle. And we want the exit time to be 1 on this one because we want to play it all the way out. And let's see if this works. So if we lock on and back up and click space, it should perform the backflip. It seemed like it did do it, but it took a second. Let's see why that happened. Oh, you know what? It's because we did it backwards. So make sure you connect the backflip and make sure its hop direction Y is less than 0 because we want it to happen when we're moving backwards. So now when we back up and click the space button or the jump button, we should do a backflip. There we go. Now I edited the animation. I cut off the front and back of it, so that's probably why mine might look better. But all you have to do is go into the animation by clicking on your armature animation, go to the backflip, and just edit the backflip animation. So delete the front and back. I made Link land in like a squat pose, and then I just let the transition handle the rest of the animation. So now we have pretty much every animation. All we got to do is add a roll animation okay, now let's add the forward roll if we're moving forward. So navigate to your roll animation that we used earlier in the video, place that in the same tree that we have, and then make a transition to that roll. Now we're gonna go down, add a condition, and go down to hop direction Y, and if hop direction Y is less than 0, if hop direction Y is greater than 0, then we want to perform a roll. Make sure that there's no exit time and no transition duration on the way from combat jump to roll, and then make another transition back to combat idle, and make sure that this exit time is set to 1, no transition duration, and that's pretty much it. So now we should be able to roll forward. Let's see. All right, roll. It's a little bit jank due to that's not due to this logic, it's due to the lock-on system, which we will improve in the combat video. But check it out, we got all the side hops and rules implemented into the game, we could do everything. And the animations are a little bit wonky, but that's just a matter of making little tweaks and trying to make it look as good as you want it to look. But the logic, nonetheless, is there. So there is one more issue where it seems like sometimes whenever I want to perform a backflip, it just does another side hop. And I think that's due to the fact that these hop directions are sometimes in like some weird middle stage and they're not exactly 1 or 0. So I think we're just going to fix that by copying the script, going back into ChatGPT. So I'm just going to tell ChatGPT to make it like a hard-coded value for now. So I told ChatGPT I want you to scrap the hop direction X logic for a method where you hard code the values. For example, if I click W, hop direction X equals 0 and hop direction Y equals 1, etc. So it should just fill it out and you can see what it's going to look like. So this will make the movement much more consistent. So if I do backflip, I'm always going to perform the correct animation. And I can make sure that we're not able to do the double rolls, but that will be in a future episode when we cover combat. But for right now, we got exactly what we wanted. I think I'm going to change that roll to a jump slash anyway. So this is epic, baby. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. We got a working combat system. Pretty happy with it. Or sorry, we have a working animation system. This is exactly what we were looking for in our Zelda clone. Yes, sir. So, in the next episode, we will cover combat. And I think that's going to be one of the most exciting episodes so far. Because that opens up avenues like boss battles and the potential to make our own moves and start working on some environments. Ooh, we're getting pretty deep into this boy. Alright, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.